All right, so sorry we can't be together in person, but I've somewhat mastered Zoom, so hopefully this will go well. So we got a couple of issues we're covering here today. Let's see here. So one, we're going to discuss this non-indemnified clinical research program or process, which is, I know, another layer of bureaucracy for you in your research, so I apologize. I would like to start out by saying I didn't create this process. I inherited it when I came here in 2009, so it's not my fault. But like anything, once you create a bureaucracy, it just doesn't go away. Secondly, we're going to talk about this issue of when you may have to communicate with the folks in Frankfurt when you're going into a participant's home to perform clinical research. And I will talk about that as well. So let's kind of just jump into this. The other thing is, Marietta told me that this thing has to go a certain amount of time for you to get credit. So we may have an extended question and answer period at the end to make sure we get to your 45 minutes, because I don't know that I have 45 minutes worth of material, but I'll try not to talk fast like lawyers normally do, but it's kind of a habit. All right, so what is it? What is the non-indemnification process and why do we have it? So when you do clinical research, in the good old days, when you had sponsored research, excuse me, the sponsor would indemnify, which means basically if there was an unexpected event with a research subject or a patient, and they suffered an injury or some type of adverse medical event because of the participation in the research program, the sponsor would basically pick up the cost for that. Or if they were to make a civil claim of some sort against us, indemnify basically means you're stepping into place. So if we receive indemnification from Merck and we get sued, and that means Merck basically steps into our place and they pay for all of the defense costs, and if there's a settlement or a judgment, they pay for it. And so basically the process is there to provide some level of financial protection for you. Or for your PIs that you work for. I don't know how many of you all are researchers versus you work with researchers who might find themselves on the wrong end of a lawsuit. But basically, this program exists when you don't have indemnification, either because it's investigator initiated and not related to any kind of sponsor, or it's investigator initiated and the sponsor doesn't provide indemnification, or I think nowadays NIH doesn't ever indemnify. And so it's becoming more the exception than the rule. It used to be the rule was when you did a study, if it was some type of sponsor, they would indemnify, and they basically, they would assume the risk. Now it's becoming more and more the case where the investigator is the one assuming the risk. And in these cases where there is no indemnification, you are assuming a legal risk if you don't have the coverage through the program here at UK. And so that's why we have it. We're trying to protect you from any type of legal risk that could come about if a patient in a research study, clinical research study, were to sue because they suffered an adverse event in some way. And so what gets reviewed? So basically, if it's not IRB exempt and you don't have indemnification otherwise, you got to go through this process. So here's a list. There's a couple on the next page too, but these are the types of things that are going to require you to be indemnified, go through this process, and basically, I know you can read, so I'm not going to make it a habit of reading my own slide here, but basically, if it's not exempt, let me get to the next one. Here's a couple more, but if it doesn't fit one of these three, if it's not IRB exempt, if it's not IRB expedited, or if it's not supported by a sponsor that provides full indemnification, you get to go through this process that has been created at UK to make sure that there is financial protection, that there is, we're self-insured through the state, but that there is coverage for your people involved in the research study if someone were to decide to bring legal action because they suffered some type of adverse event in connection with legal. So this is for your benefit or for the benefit of those who you work with who are, kind of in the crosshairs if something goes south during a research study, or if there's just, that's why we do research. And, sometimes we find out that something's not as safe as effective. In those situations, you want to make sure that there's a wall of financial protection between you and that person who might want to pursue legal action. So another question is your study, so the bigger hurdle, of all the hurdles you have to get over, the non-indemnity process is not the biggest hurdle. Obviously, getting IRB approval is the biggest one, but that's not synonymous with being covered by the non-indemnification process. So they do, obviously you have to go through that process, but once you've gotten through that, if you're not otherwise exempt from the non-indemnification process, you have to go through us. And so you really don't have the protection until you've gone through this process. And so some people ask, well, why, if the IRB has approved it, why do we have to go through the risk management process for the non-indemnification coverage? That's because legal risk and the risk that the IRB look at means there are some things that are in common, but lawyers have other worries that the people in the IRB do not have. And sometimes it's just about how something is worded. You all may understand something from your scientific research perspective, but when we're looking at it and thinking about it in terms of the legalities of it and how it might be interpreted in a court of law, we might need you to tweak something in order for us to say, yes, we'll approve this. Or, maybe you actually haven't thought of everything. Now, when it comes to science, I promise you are much smarter than me, but I have, 30 plus years of legal experience and have seen, the issues that get people sued. I know the types of things that plaintiffs' lawyers will pick at in order to pursue a legal case against someone. And so my job is to help protect you to the greatest extent possible. So, you go through the second process just so we can look at it from a legal perspective and make sure that, all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed to the extent possible. It doesn't mean you won't get sued, but once you've been in this process, at least you'll have protection for it. So how do you submit it? So kind of the how-to, the PI is responsible for kind of knowing, yes, I do or I don't need to go through this process, and ultimately is responsible for initiating the process. The guidelines Marietta, are we going to send out the slide deck and make this site available here, the link?
Yes, Michelle can send it out afterwards, and we actually sent out a notice this morning on the CCTS listserv with the information about the new process and the link to the website.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go through this right now because it's not really relevant for you to understand, but we have streamlined, let me say we, Marietta has streamlined the process, and I have given it a thumbs up. She's done the heavy lifting. And so we're trying, so one of the challenges that has existed over the years is that there are several different doors you could go through to initiate this process, and it wasn't always clear which door you had to go through. So we're trying to make that easier to where it's kind of, one door. Is that a fair thing to say, Marietta? For you to start through, and once you get to that door, we'll figure out kind of how to get it in the right hands after that. So it's easier on your end, and hopefully the process will go smoother as well, and get it reviewed and turned around as quickly as possible so you all can start the research. But this is how you submit it. You go to this link. There's a whole explanation of the process. And ultimately, if you have any questions, you can call either Marietta or myself, and we will help you. I mean, if something's not clear to you, I mean, we think it's clear, but we wrote it, so of course we understand it. If something's not clear to you, you can email or contact us, and we can help answer any questions. But we think we have simplified this to the point where it will be easier for you to set things in motion, and then you don't have to worry about what happens behind the scenes. All you'll get is, hopefully an approval as quickly as possible, or possibly a question from time to time before it can be approved. I will tell you, in my 10 plus years, had to think about what year it was, in my 10 plus years at UK dealing with these issues, I think there is one study we have actually said no to. You just flat out, no, we don't feel this is safe. and we don't feel like we can assume the risk for this study. Now, there are several, I mean, I don't know how many because it's been so long, but it is not uncommon for us to have questions and to maybe have to tweak some language, but our goal is to get you to the finish line, okay? Our goal is not to stop your research. We are a research institution. This is what we do. So our goal in legal is to get you to the finish line. And there are times where we've had to, take a little detour, to get there. But that is our goal, and we all 99.99% of the time we achieve that goal. Maybe not as quickly as you want us to, but we try to do it as quickly and as efficiently as possible so you can start the research, which is what we it's why we're here at UK, at least why you're here. Okay, so here's some of the stuff you have to submit. The one that you're probably not familiar with is the risk assessment form. This is a form we created. A lot of it can be cut and paste from your IRB submissions. And at the end, let's see, let me look at my next slide here for a second. Yeah, at the end, these first couple bullet points, whoever's doing there's a person who will send it to me, essentially, to get it going. And they'll tell me whether it's something that should be expedited, which means myself and 2 other people look at it. That's a lawyer, 2 lawyers and a doctor. Probably should be 2 doctors and a lawyer, but it's 2 lawyers and a doctor who review expedited ones. A full review goes to the full risk management committee, which meets once per month on the 2nd Thursday of the month. We just met last Thursday. And so, if you're trying to if you think it's going to be a full review, and you're getting close to the 2nd, 3rd, I mean, you can get to me the day before, I'll get it on the agenda. You can, well, now we start at 8:30, it's hard to get to me the same day. But if you'll get me to me the day before, I'll get it on the agenda. Otherwise, you're waiting a month. And so just keep that in mind as you're trying to decide, if it's, and what makes something expedited versus full. Something that is a greater risk, is probably more likely going to be a full review, but probably 98% of what I get is expedited. I mean, I don't even have a study every month to take. I just had 2 this month, but I don't have a study every month to take to the risk management committee for full review. That's the exception. But once we have that, so for an expedited, just so you all know, I get them, I send them to Margaret Pisacano, our director of risk management, and I send them to Dr. Kevin Nelson, who's who's part of the chief medical officer's office, and the 3 of us will look at them. Dr. Nelson kind of looks at it from the medical side, and Margaret and I look at it from the legal side, and we try to turn those around. Well, I try to turn them around in the same week, but getting our 3 schedules to align, sometimes it can take as much as 2 weeks, but I really do try to keep a track of how long it's been out there and remind my fellow reviewers to move those forward so that you all can get going. So next. So after the questions are raised, under the current process, you get an email, your PI and whoever sends it to me initially gets an email from me saying it's been approved. It's going to change under the new process, and you'll get an email from, I don't remember exactly who from Marietta, but someone else is controlling the final approval process. And once you get that approval, you're good to go. And you just need to make sure you save that for your files so that if someone says, hey, did this go through the process, you can say, yes, here's my approval, and you'll be fine with that. But again, the process is being streamlined and under the new procedures that are on that link that was in the earlier slide. And I'm hopeful that this will make it easier, 1, to understand how it works, and 2, to actually execute and initiate the process for you all so that there is less confusion or fewer questions that you might have, so you can just go through this as quickly and efficiently as possible. Okay. So just kind of a reminder, obviously important because we put it in red. You gotta wait to hear from us, and you gotta get the approval before you get going. So don't have a false start. So if sometimes it's not unusual for a protocol to get modified in the midst of a study. This doesn't mean you have to stop. and for us to approve it all. We just want to know, okay? We just want to know because we've assumed this risk, and we just want to know the nature of the modification and want to know how the language of the consent form has been tweaked as it relates to that. We're not going to make you stop the study, but we may again have some comments on how you've drafted the consent form and whether we feel like it sufficiently explains all the risks to the patients based on the modification. So this is just a kind of an FYI to us. It's not a timeout, okay? The process continues, but we do want to be in the know. The same thing is if your PI changes, that's just so we know who to contact if we have questions. If something comes up related to the study in the risk office, because oftentimes the risk office is the first one to know that something's gone awry. Patient complains, or they hire a lawyer and the lawyer calls, and they're the ones that are going to find out. So they want to know who to contact. And so if the PI's change, you just need to let us know so we have the appropriate person to contact if something comes up and we need to communicate with you all. Okay. Encore. I have a very cursory understanding of Encore, but I know it's a lot where you store a lot of your data, or where you're supposed to store your data on your studies. And now we've added some stuff about non-indemnification into the Encore process. This is actually good for a couple reasons. One, just a check for you to remember. Oh, I gotta think through this. Do I need this? And two, we until now, if we get everybody to start using Encore appropriately, we had no way of knowing exactly all the research that was going on, clinical research that was going on at the university. And this will give us a way to have access to that. So that's a different issue. That's not really your concern, but it's helpful to us. But it is just a reminder, a check, oh yes, I need to think through this issue. And then you have that to check off and you're good to go. Anything else I need to say about that, Marietta?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right. I got to talk way slower. Okay, home health exemption. What is it? So, if UK was a home health provider, which we are not, we would have to go through a process called the Certificate of Need process with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, which is basically a process whereby we get permission from the state to offer that service, okay? I mean, sometimes a certificate of need, most certificate of needs are not controversial when you're just talking about stuff like this. If, sometimes they're looking at, do you need that next provider in this particular area? If you want to build a hospital in Lexington, you guys get a certificate of need, and I can guarantee you that UK Baptist and St. Joe's are going to oppose you because we think we have enough hospitals already, right? But the certificate of need is one, it manages the, do you need that extra care, but also, make sure that you're competent and qualified to provide the care. So if we're going into a research participant's home to provide a health service, which I don't need to go through the definition right now, but basically it's anytime, if you're taking vitals, if you're taking blood, if you're doing some type of therapy on, physical therapy or occupational therapy, or if you're assessing the patient, doing a physical examination, that's kind of a health service. And you need to request an exemption. So basically what you're saying is, we're going in to do something that looks like home health, but it's for research, so we don't need the CON. And the reason this is a lot of times the cabinet will get wind of this somehow, some other way, and they'll think someone's doing home health without being properly licensed and without a proper CON. We do this up front so they know, hey, we're out there doing this. If you hear about it, then you'll know that you've already basically vetted this and said we're good to go and we don't need a certificate of need. Now, the negative part is under the statute, which cited there, actually that, I don't know if that's the exact paragraph, but we're supposed to request this exemption 60 days before we start the study. And the problem is a lot of times people don't come across this requirement until 2 days before they want to start. So just know that if you are working with a PI and there's going to be a home visit type of element to your study where you're going to go in and do some of your data collection or examinations with the research subjects / patients, this is something you need to think of up front. You don't have to have gone through the non-indemnification process. You don't even have to have necessarily gotten through, well, probably do need the IRB. I'm not sure, no, actually not. I just need to be able to describe what the study is, what you will be doing in the home, and declare that it will be for research purposes. So, be thinking about this. If we're going into the patient's home, and I'm the primary contact for this one. So, you just contact me as early as possible. It's a 1-paragraph letter. I'll ask you for some very simple information to plug into the letter. I'll draft it and let you look at it to make sure it's accurate, and I'll get it out as quickly as possible. But technically, under the law, they want now they don't necessarily take 60 days to respond to the letter, but right now in the era of COVID, nothing is happening fast, including the mail. I don't know how much you've been keeping up with in the news, but there are tractor trailers full of mail out at the main distribution center in Lexington that are just like sitting there, and they get rotated in and out. So mail is moving slowly right now in Lexington and in the United States in general. So to the extent you can do this early in the process, if you're going into the home of a research subject, then that is the best. And there may be times when it's not required. I mean, if you're just like going in to ask them questions, you're not physically touching them, you're not examining them, you're not taking, blood, probably I would not require you to go through this process. But I have to understand what you'll be doing in the home before I can determine whether it's necessary or not. But that is something that needs to be done earlier so that it doesn't slow you down. You don't want to figure this out the day before you're supposed to see your first patient in the study. That would be not good timing for you. Okay. As I said, they'll issue the response, and I will. So the waiting period is really just, we're supposed to give them 60 days notice. So that may be not the best way I could have put it, but anyway, it could slow you down. And so I don't want it to slow you down. So the sooner you get to me when you're going to be going into the home of a research subject, the better is the moral to the story. Okay. So now I'm going to unshare my screen, and we need 15 minutes of questions is what we need right now. we need 15 minutes of questions, or we're going to sit here and stare at each other for 15 minutes, one or the other. So we can either have questions or we can just stare at each other for 15 minutes, but you need to get credit for this. And so I will stay on here. You can either unmute if you want, although I can't see everybody. So maybe if you want to, if you just want to just put something in the chat box, just put your name and I can say your name and you can be the first person to talk. Otherwise, like I said, we're gonna be here for actually 17 minutes.
Cliff, you can feel free to end as soon as you like if we don't have any questions. But
no, we have one. Hold on, we have one.
Okay, great.
Wendy, and I'm not gonna take a shot. We have a couple here. Wendy, I'm not gonna try to pronounce your last name because I would butcher it. For investigators new to research or new to the university, how are they notified of this process if they aren't using CCTS services? Marietta?
Thanks, Cliff. So that's a very good question. We actually today, as we are getting ready to roll this out, I have submitted this new update to both the EVPR's office, and they are going to put that in their upcoming newsletter for September, and also through the College of Medicine, they are putting it in their research newsletter as well. So hopefully the information of the new process will get out to everyone that's involved in research. Now, ongoing, it's a challenge that we've struggled with since the non-indemnification process came into play. And hopefully, if they've got anyone that's working on the regulatory with them that's familiar with it, they're offering them some guidance with that. But it is a huge challenge on how to do this. Now, the IRB is actually doing a nice job when they see something that is investigator initiated and they think that it might need non-indemnification review. They have been putting that information into the IRB requested revisions. So that is helping some as well. But it is a huge ongoing challenge that we have.
So Belinda Smith also notes that there are reminders in the EIRB application in one of the comments I received. So anyway, but that is a challenge. That's why we're doing this today, in all honesty. We do it about at least once a year where I come and entertain you for 45 minutes so that more people will know. But word of mouth works well. So if you know someone who doesn't know, please share. Okay, so Victoria King asked, what about a mental health type of intervention? Does it fall under home health policy? That is a fair question.
Cliff, and I want to add to that. I was thinking more, I should have put, so you're delivering it via Zoom also.
I would not say Zoom, because telehealth has been greatly enhanced in Kentucky, and I would not consider that to be home health, because telehealth, I mean, the folks in Frankfurt have greatly enhanced our ability to do telehealth. Now, a lot of that's because of the pandemic, but I got a feeling that the relaxing of those regulations, they're going to continue after this, because we have found that there's lots of different ways to do our jobs other than coming into the office. Now, I'm in the office here on campus, but for the better part of 4.5 months, I was in my home right behind Marietta, because we are neighbors, and I did my job just as effectively sitting at my dining room table, wearing my short pants and my short sleeve shirt very comfortably, I might add, and I don't think anyone could tell that we weren't on campus, because I have VPN access. I could access all my documents are electronic. I don't have any paper files. So I was able to do it. So I believe that telehealth does not equal home health. That is my interpretation, and I will stand by that until someone tells me I'm wrong. So anyway, so if that's what you're talking about, as far as mental health type of intervention, I don't believe that would fall under home health. If you're physically going into the home, which I'm not sure if you can do it by telehealth, why you would do that, but if you have to, just call me, and I'll have to ask you specifically what you're doing in order to answer your question, unfortunately. Let's see here. Dr. Kern, based on your experience, would it be possible to provide a list of common issues that result in review that provokes a change? What would we be looking out for? The things that most often, probably, it's usually the consent form. And I don't think there is I don't have like a top 10 list. Some of it's our own gestalt of reading it and trying to decide whether we believe that is sufficient from a medical legal standpoint. I mean, it's kind of like, I hate to use this analogy, but it's kind of like what the Supreme Court says about pornography. We know it when we see it. We have experiences. So one of the favorites of medical malpractice to throw in these days is a claim for lack of informed consent. Now, in most med mal cases, it's not, you're not dealing with research issues, but I mean, it's kind of become a fad where these just kind of get tacked on. If they can, they're going to pick nits if they can, and if they can see anything in your consent form that they think did not adequately, inform the patient as to the risk they were getting ready to take, then they're going to pursue it. So unfortunately, I don't really have, but that's usually I would say 75% of the time it's something, the change. Sometimes it's not so much change as we just have to ask the question because we don't understand something as the lawyers. I mean, Dr. Nelson usually can explain it, but even sometimes it's an area, he's a neurologist, not always an area he understands well enough to be able to tell us the answer. So sometimes we just got to seek clarification, but usually the things that we seek to change involves the consent. And I don't think it's not a one thing. It's really very case specific based upon our review and what we know about what the patient's going to be going through. Okay, let's see here. We got 11 more minutes. And
I think we're probably okay if no one has any more questions, but if they do, I'd like to answer them while you're on here.
yeah. So when I used to practice in private, I was a trial attorney for 17 years. I did medical malpractice and products liability defense work. That's why I'm involved with this process, because I have some experience in medical malpractice. When you take a deposition, that's when you basically question the witness under oath before the trial. The best questions ever thought of happened on my drive home. Like I would have thought, oh, I should have asked that. That would have been the greatest question to ask. Unlike me, who couldn't go back and put the witness back under oath, if you have a question you wish you would have asked after this, you can actually email Marietta and myself. Email us both, because one of us will probably, we may both know the answer, but one of us should know the answer. So just email us both if something comes up, or as you're going through, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to both of us, and we'll help you through it. Our goal is to get you to the finish line so that you can start your research trial study and move forward and advance clinical and medical knowledge. The goal is not to slow you down, although you may not agree with that sometimes. So sorry. But if there are no other questions, which I don't see any, I will sign off. And although I don't seem to have access to my my mouse right now, there it is. It disappeared. And like I said, if anybody has any questions after the fact, feel free to reach out, and we'll be happy to answer them.